Yeah, welcome to this live Q&A today about Topical Authority and Semantic SEO. I'm Pontus Vippelius, the host here. I'm head of SEO at Relevance, and I've been working in this industry for 13, 14 years. And like lately, I've really digged into an area which we are going to talk about today, which is Semantic SEO and Topical Authority, because that's really something that challenged me, and I think Koray really challenged a lot of us in the industry when he came out with the case studies, etc. So this is a bit in honor of that group as well. And once again, I did the exact same thing that I did on the last stream. I got the voice from the other stream here below. But I'm so glad here today to have Pavel Klimakov with me. I would say that you are one of the thought leaders in this segment, and I'm super happy to have you. Can you just give a short introduction who you are?
Sure. Appreciate the kind words. My name is Pavel Klimakov. I've been doing SEO for around 7 years at this point. Over the around last 2 years, I've been focused on semantics and topical authority approach and all of these things. In my free time, that's the common question. I actually try to read patents and research papers that Koray shares. And that actually takes a ton of time in combination with the case studies, course, and everything else.
Amazing to hear. Yeah, and as we said, we are going to be very nerdy here today about like Topical Authority and Semantic SEO, and we are here to take on your questions. But to get this started, we would like to start with a couple of questions so you can fill it. So if I'm asking you, Pavel, if you would explain Topical Authority for someone that still knows what it is, but why it's so powerful, what would you say?
So if we think of Topical Authority as a methodology to rank the website, as in a process or a strategy that someone can follow, it is, well, first thing, it is based on probably hundreds of research papers and patents, which forces you or puts you in a position where you become a very significant entity on the web that Google is not able to ignore. So it's not that they're considering to maybe give you traffic. You're so significant and so important that they have to account you in their current system that they have. And in a simpler, let's say, overall explanation, it is about covering lots of interconnected topics in a very detailed and thorough way under the context that is related to your business model. That would be, I think, the simplest explanation that I can give.
Yeah, exactly. And as we all in these kind of communities discussing it, it's so much from my perspective also about, as we say, like deepness and also kind of the connections. And I think most of people that have been working in like traditional SEO has always been looking at it as kind of keywords and more kind of the historical data aspect. But when you look at it in depth, it's more kind of really switching to entities, really understanding the combinations and how they combine to each other and how they are structured in a kind of semantic way. Do you agree, Pavel, or do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, sure. I can say that I think if we go back to, let's say, 2016, 17, 18, it really was more like you have the keyword you want to rank for, you just put it in your title, you put a version of that in your URL, and then you just write something about that. And it's pretty much good enough. And if you have like 50 topics that you want to rank for, open 50 pages, like it's simple like that. But now it's you have to connect them. So if you have 50 topics, but all of them are disconnected from each other, then you cannot even open all of those pages. You need interconnected nodes or pages that will be connecting the topics. So it gets more granular, more complex. And I would say also there is a kind of multi-dimensionality, because if you try to process topics in a semantic way, you need to really consider or calculate in multiple different variables. It's not just, I like this keyword, it has search volume, and I go for it. It's about the users, their behavior, the index of the search engine, plus the competition, your brand, your source content. It's like, it's kind of like a, multi dimensions at the same time, and you need to balance them. So it becomes way more trickier actually than just like get these keywords, write for them, publish them, done.
Yeah, I feel like SEOs really sometimes want to simplify things, but they are not simple. We really need to understand that things can be complicated, but if we want to learn it, and if we learn more and more about how it works, it's about, for me, about like increasing the chances. You will never be 100% that something would work, because there's so many variables with even outside of this that we are aware of or could impact. But it's about a kind of increasing the chances of actually succeeding, and not just creating content for the sake of it, in essence.
Yeah, absolutely. It is exactly the quality thresholds type of concept.
Yeah.
If you can just become better at everything, you surpass certain thresholds compared to other sites that didn't do that. So you become a better, let's say, alternative, or a better candidate to be receiving traffic. And it's all about the, let's say, the chances or the probabilities.
Yeah. Just say hi to Mustafa here. Yeah, thank you for being here, and I hope you have a lot of good questions during this Q&A, because as we said, I will continue with my questions for Pavel, but I hope you have even better for both of us. So let's just push them into the comment sections here. Great. But like, like, if you would try to describe maybe we were a bit slightly on it, but if you would describe the difference between traditional SEO, as most people say, and kind of this kind of topical authority semantic way, how would you describe it?
Well, I think a big difference there is, maybe in a traditional way, it's more, in a sense, like an even egoistic approach, you can say. It's like, I want these keywords, so I just put them on my page, and then I write content, I push the links, and like, it should happen at some point. It should happen. In a semantic SEO, in this type of structure, it's really about understanding the reality of the search engine, understanding what it actually wants, what is its preference at this moment, and how you can embed yourself or integrate yourself into that, and not on just a kind of like low chance weak point, but preferably on the strongest point, so you can claim the best position and hold it and retain it. Yeah. So there is a lot more, you can say, in social words or in human words, empathy, or kind of like acceptance. But from a technological part, it is deeper understanding, more research, and way more granular perception of, if we just go to the source, put our, let's say, keyword that we want to rank for, there's a much deeper perception that comes to, let's say, the SEO specialist or expert, in terms of what they are able to even observe just on the SERP, which gives them that intel information to sort of, what are we doing as our next steps? Are we even able to compete here or not? So it's a lot about this levels of understanding, and you can say empathy or alignment with the search engine.
Yeah, let's start with the first questions here from the chat. So let's start with this. What is the quickest way to build a brand outside of content on your website? Okay, so this, I believe, is more about the branding than the content itself. And well, first I should start with that I'm not really a brand expert. It's what are you?
No, I have to say that because I'm saying this in comparison. I have let's say friends that are not in the SEO industry, but they are, let's say, running e-commerce stores or services, or like they provide the service in like a real physical world, and the way they actually increase the branding, like real brand that people are aware of, that process is different from just building the content. So this is, I think, the similarities that would be between creating content and building up the brand overall. It's about understanding the audience and your customers that can be your buyers. And then how would they want to see you? What would be the best preferable company for them to buy, that they would be either, let's say, proud to buy from there, or they would be very happy to show to their friends that they bought something from here. So it's kind of how do you position, what do you present there? Let's say if something is presented as super luxury and elite and rare, it would attract certain type of crowd. In comparison, if you position yourself as like cheap, affordable, discounted, it's a different type of crowd. So yeah, the question here is, what's the quickest way to build that?
And if we jump on it from a more kind of SEO perspective still, and look at it like building topical authority on someone else's site, I would never really go for it. But of course, like if you really can connect with someone and do a full parasite setup with full semantic content networks, that would be one way. But to build a brand on someone else's site, that is not what I want to achieve. I want to do it on my own assets, so I actually build the value on my site, because it's so. To be honest, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't build a new brand outside of my site with SEO and semantic content as the topical authority as the strategy. I would do something else then. Do you agree, Pavel? Or
yeah, and then you either have, let's say, social media presence or ad type of traffic, advertisement traffic, or just the offline presence where you put a banner or you put up a physical store. But then, yeah, it's not really about content or the website, so it's a disconnect there in a way.
Yeah, let's leave it here for now. I hope you got your question answered, Mark. Let's jump on to the next one here. So how do you use sequence modeling for using the right entities with the right content? Oh, maybe we have it's a follow-up maybe on this one, sorry. How do you do content configuration after a core update?
So I assume this is about refreshing your existing content instead of creating something new. If you're asking about creating, let's say, a proper new content configuration from scratch in terms of algorithmic authorship rules, you would need a very thorough and detailed understanding of what search engine is looking at, maybe even some kind of special custom tracking system so you can see certain patterns. But this is extremely high level thing, and if I am not mistaken, which I might be, but if I'm not mistaken, I think Koray is the only person that actually was able to configure this algorithmic authorship rules, which is then he shared, which is what we're following. So if there's a massive shift during core algorithm update, you're able to track that and sort of update that. But I believe that's not really what you're asking here.
I would guess you can write if you believe in anything else said, but I would guess that he's looking at, you have built up a topical map and the full semantic content network. It's published, but after a core update, the intent is changing for some keywords or some entities, etc. So when you look at kind of changing the configuration, I would see it as it could be that you mean like moving together certain topics that is not a separate index today, or separate certain things that actually became a new index. So I would look at kind of the backwards to content structure to look at the actual search results and see what is actually there, because that's the kind of the best way to see what has actually changed during the core updates. And especially since we have seen a lot of shifts now from, let's say, affiliate to e-com in the latest core updates, as multiple people have said, like maybe you're battling about the position 6 or 12 right now, because those are the two affiliate positions, but the other ones are e-com intents. So that could be the kind of situation that you need to dig into to understand it. Do you agree, Paul? Or
Yeah,
Pavel?
yeah,
Oh, Paul. Sorry, Pavel.
definitely. In that sense, as Koray actually teaches, you don't. Ideally, you want to track your positions on like a 24-hour basis to see if there are any shifts, because maybe the negative decline or something negative can start happen a few months before the core update, and it's ideal if you notice that before, because you can fix things before the core update and avoid having these, let's say, negative pitfalls. So it is primarily about understanding where you are positioned on the SERPs, and if you see changes, then you analyze why, let's say, why you're losing rankings or who is outranking you, whether it's their overall coverage, whether it's the page level coverage, the, let's say, depth that you provide versus what they cover, or how they structure their content. These are the small variables. And then, of course, during all of these processes, console is your best friend to look at, because it gives you all of these sort of nuances. In a sense, you can even not look at your content, but you can look at the console and look at the SERPs and, let's say, competitors that are a problem for you. Then you can realize what are you, let's say, hitting in impressions versus what they cover. So you can see that type of mismatch. That would be, I think that would be a good answer for this.
Yeah, and let's take this question shortly also, even though it's hard to do shortly. But how do you use sequence modeling for using the right entities with the right context? I think it's connected to the previous one in terms of that.
Sure. So let's say if there is an article and I'm noticing that there are new questions that are being added, that by added, I mean that are trending or that are appearing, and I realize that I did not cover them. These could be specific attributes that I did not cover, or maybe there are additional connections in a style of contextual layers that are very suitable for this specific page. Then it's good to analyze and understand what are the phrase combinations that appear with these entities. Whether it's just, let's say, if you imagine a bubble of different phrases and it just slightly connects to my topic, then it would be maybe a question whether I really even want to include that or not. If it's a big trend, I would want to include it, but I wouldn't want to make it something that I give too much weight to. In comparison, if I can see that this is really an entity or a concept that is being vastly used with this specific page and its main entity, then yeah, I can see the combinations or variations, how one entity operates or connects with another one, whether, again, adjectives, predicates, everything that comes in combination, and lots of ways to do that. You can, again, check SERPs, you can check the even like auto suggestions. If you do things in a programmatic way, you can generate different, let's say, predictions and then try to match them against the data in SERPs. That's kind of what search engine does already. But it's all a bit, let's say, more advanced and more complex. In a simpler way, it's just understanding the connections from your main topic to the additional one and the, let's say, co-occurrences or the popularities. And then you make a decision whether you include it or not. If it's high searches, then yes, you include that. And then how deep you process it, whether it's going to be a new heading and the new section, or it will be just a preceding question or just a slight mention of that concept. So that's the differences.
Yeah, and just shortly from my perspective, I think you are on it. I would say like maybe this is the time to look at n-grams, etc. Maybe this is the time to also connect it to the source context to understand who am I in this position, what is most relevant, because in the end we want to drive business, we want to understand the customer, as you said in the beginning, and like try to use the best sequence modeling for for that kind of logic, but in the end, it's going back to auto rules like responding to the question directly, remove all the fluff, and that's kind of a sequence modeling also in essence. So there is a lot of different parts in it, but I think you explained it very well. Great. Let's move on here. What is the most counterintuitive but important point that you got from studying semantic SEO?
This is a great question. I'll also say hello to Vincent, especially because he's a very prominent member in the holistic community. I think counterintuitive. I'm not sure about counterintuitive, but I would say that I think there's a lot of confusion around whether you should use keywords or not, and should you open a page for each keyword or not each keyword, because Koray says he uses queries, but then he says he writes about things that even are not mentioned in queries. So this is a bit of a confusing point. I would say you definitely want to open pages that address the search volume. So you don't open pages for something that's not being searched. But inside the pages, you can go deeper and more specific, even if there are no queries that are requesting that specific data. As long as it helps you deepen and consolidate your, let's say, answers or your context, that will be helpful. That would be my answer. I would also say in terms of counterintuitive, if you go through, let's say, different systems or patterns, things like that, there would be lots of surprising small things that can seem counterintuitive in the beginning. But I guess it also depends, where are your intuitions coming from? Is it from the traditional SEO, or maybe you're a scientist that actually researches information retrieval? Then most of these things will feel very intuitive. So it's like that.
From me, that's been working for a long time in the SEO industry, it was like going back a bit in a sense of like, you really try to simplify things. Most people have always said, yeah, you need to treat Google like a 3-year-old, 5-year-old. But that is really what Koray does. Like in terms of like direct response, I mentioned like in bullet list, keeping the same initial part, and these kind of simple rules that auto rules wise, that is kind of, it doesn't really make sense in reading sometimes, but from kind of a structure point of view and the search engine point of view, it really makes sense. And that's a bit counterintuitive for me, at least, as kind of how you create content and engagement, etc. sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely agree with that, especially within the way content or answers are being written. Sometimes it can feel like this is too simple, or like, why are we doing this? But yeah,
it works. That's kind of say hi to Germans as well.
Hello, Germans. Good to see you here.
Let's take your question here, German, so we spread the questions among the people here. What are the most common methodologies for topic generation other than token insertion methodology?
So this is about creating the topical map. I think I will answer the most common, but I want to say that it's really more about what you feel comfortable with or what you understand the most. Token insertion is just one of these methods to kind of get the main phrase and then chunk it down and break it down so you can unlock other additional variables. So let's say instead of inserting tokens, you can think of potential additional concepts or topics where we can connect our main topic. So you can sort of see this surrounding bubble. I also know that some people would start, instead of listing all of the topics, they would get the first one, then kind of get a draft of a brief for that, and then realize, okay, this will be also in the brief, we will be asking questions, how does this, let's say, affect that? Or what is the difference between this and that? So it kind of unlocks the next topics step by step. You basically move step by step as you introduce the first topic, realize the next 2 or 3 that are connected, process those. For each and every one of those, there is another 1, 2, 3 topics that are additionally that are coming up, and basically that's the like ongoing process. It's more, let's say, streamlined, and it's kind of like a from bottom to the top type of approach, whereas let's say with something like token insertion, you try to get everything, so it's like top to bottom. You get a full group and then go to the basically the lower parts. And of course, looking at queries, looking at competitors, I think it's really useful to, assuming you understand your source context and where you want to rank, you can check all of those competitors that are direct competitors, get their sitemaps, and just extract all of those topics, read through them. You will realize what they're covering, what they're not. You will also realize where there are gaps. I've done this many times with the initial projects, and it becomes very clear because there's, once, let's say, I read through 3 or 4 sitemaps of different competitors, I realize how vast the overall, like the main topic is, or the, let's say, the entire niche is. And then I literally realize there's 1 or 2 competitors, they're concentrated on like 1 or 2 bubbles, and then something in between, and others are focused on other things. And you can see these like variations, which shows that there are like massive gaps for all of them. They are not covering everything, and they're not even connecting everything. So I think sitemaps are really great, and can be fairly easy to do. And of course, you can use something like LLM or any kind of like AI system, but just use it as, like, let's say, inspiration. Do not just blindly follow those concepts, because it's just a random word predictor. It will randomly go into a direction that is maybe not really helpful for you. Plus, it can hallucinate, even if they're very, very smart. So you need to be extra careful there.
But I really like the kind of entity tree structures, no matter if you go like Wikimedia or these kind of, just to get an understanding. And that's maybe kind of the first step when you are starting of a new project. But as you say, like understanding the competition, you need it anyhow. So that's, of course, like one important thing. I've heard you mentioning before also kind of getting support questions or these kind of like aspects of actual real salespeople or whatever it could be as super valuable things to try to generate new topics, because then they're maybe not even on the internet, and you get originality. So those are also aspects I would add as kind of valuable. And I'm working a lot in e-com, so for me, kind of product data is something that people often miss, because it includes a lot of data about different attributes, usage areas, etc., that you could play with as well.
Yeah, it's definitely, like, let's say, more niche specific. I think for e-com and products, I don't remember it was the subjective attributes. That's a very, very massive thing, because Google pays attention to those. It comes from these type of natural language, let's say, articles or pages, where things like forums or discussion boards, things like that, and Google picks those up. And most of the time, these subjective attributes are very limited to only those type of specific sites or specific discussion boards. So that allows you to unlock a lot. But the point here is, most of the time, it will be just dedicated as a section within the page. So yeah, if we're talking about like overall topics or like building a topical map, there is lots of variations. Whatever you find most comfortable or most easy to understand, I would definitely go with that. And then you can sort of look through it a few times and realize if you have completed the topical map or not. If you have, then it's easier to, let's say, adapt or adjust your methodology or combine 2 different ones to actually make it complete every single time.
Yeah. I think, I hope we answered your question also here, Johannes, or do you have anything to add on this, like zero search aspects?
Do you detect zero searched topics and entities? My experience, they make difference in the SERPs. So of course, tools, any kind of available tools that show the search volume. However, we can understand that they are not reliable. But for the raw topical map, at least the way I do it, I try to get the initial data from, let's say, any kind of tools that show the search volumes. And if I see something that, let's say, I believe it should be trending, or it has to have search volume, but maybe tools are not showing that, then it's very easy to go and check the SERPs to understand what kind of index is being presented to us. Is it a merged index between two different concepts? Or does this question that you asked, or this specific entity, does it have its own separate index? If it has its own, then you can assume that there is more there. There most likely is search volume that we cannot see yet. But this can be tricky and risky, and I have to be honest that I still try to follow precisely what Koray is saying, which means open less pages, which puts you in a safer position. So in this case, you can put connection from the current topic to additional one, and then you can see how much impressions that generates. Maybe search volumes are 0, but that will generate lots of impressions. That means there's an actual searches there. And only after this point, you can open a separate page relying on your real data that came from the console, not relying on any third-party data. But yeah, this is slower and more complex, but that would be, I think, the safest way to do it.
Yeah, and the thing that I'm doing additionally to that is kind of news topics or trend topics, as you mentioned just briefly, kind of looking at the Google trends for a certain market, or kind of looking at, you have knowledge in the space and you want to create something because we want to achieve trendy topics, and that is kind of the idea of SEO search. Otherwise, it's very challenging to go on that depth on page level. Of course, you can do it within content if you have experience and knowledge in the space. But
yeah. I think Koray mentioned something like you can see the disagreement between, let's say, biggest third-party tools, third-party providers of this data. If there is a big gap or a big mismatch, then it makes sense to analyze or dive deeper to see like what's going on there. So you can check the SERPs in that sense, you can check the indexes, and then if needed, you can do that kind of A/B testing on your page to see if there are impressions there. But yeah, that's really the only data that we have, at least at this point.
Yeah, and here we have a question from Carolina. If you rank #1 on a paragraph page for a keyword, would you say that you have topical authority for that keyword?
So topical authority, it's back, I think this was the first question. You asked something like, how do you define it or how you explain it? The thing is that topical authority is a process, which we explained before, and also it is a state or like a ranking state of the website. So at least in my understanding, the state of topical authority is when you become the most important site in your cluster, which is in patents, it's called the representative source of the cluster. So it's not about having a single keyword, it's representing the entire topic and all of these variations and subtopics that are connected to basically this main bubble or combinations of topics. So yeah, it's not just about a single keyword or a single query, it's about representing all of these variations and all possible variations. But if you're ranking at least for one term, you're on your way to becoming that. Because if search engine trusts you with this topic, you can then increase your rankings for all these connected topics, or maybe templated queries that are related to this specific keyword. And then that helps you sort of scale and grow further towards the actual state of the topical authority.
Yeah, the best way to test it is to take a very narrow, very like close topic, create a page and see if you also rank for that one, because that would indicate that you are strong, at least if you have topical authority, let's say, but you're strong in that topic at least. By looking at one, you can just be other kind of aspects that is pushing it. But I totally agree with you that it's about more like the full domain or the full topic that you are looking at in terms of topical authority.
Yeah, and you also can, for example, look for like long tail queries, or not long tail, but you can try to merge different entities or topics, search for that and see if you're being, so that will give you a merged index, and you can see if you're appearing there or not, because the most representative, most trusted sources will be appearing there. So if you have this state, if you have this like level of coverage, you will be included in there because you're one of the most reputable sources on the web. That's the point there.
Let's jump on to Mustafa's question here. In the e-commerce context, what is the next step after defining the topical map? Should we build navigation based on these topics or focus on ensuring we create a valuable user experience instead of just optimizing for Google?
So this is, I'll try to answer fast, but this is a really interesting question, or a very interesting concept, because as I went through the patterns, really like the initial ones that Koray shared, it became very clear that there is no really such thing as like optimizing for Google, because Google is trying to align themselves with preference of users. So if you're trying to satisfy Google, you will, let's say, satisfy the algorithm, but then algorithm will test you against the users. And if they don't like you, you will be demoted. So I think it's much more helpful to maybe bring these topics or these concepts together, that when you're satisfying Google, you're also as well satisfying the user. You can simply think about the historical data. You can add all these concepts, you can add all of the topics, questions, answers, everything else onto your page. You will get the impressions, but once you're getting tested and Google, users don't like your layout, your answers, things like that, you will just go lower. You will not be used because users don't like you. So that's the big difference.
And that's really connecting to the counterintuitive for me about semantics, because this is for the real first time I believed in user signals, and you're really connecting that aspect here also. Like, for real, I thought that Google could never use user signals, and Koray said it for a long time, and with the leaks, everyone is saying it, so it's pretty fun, to be honest.
I maybe this is a bit disconnected argument, but the first information retrieval research, which was done in like 50s or 60s, the Cranfield experiments, if you go through them, you realize that, and at least this was my interpretation of all of this, is that you have to have a human in the algorithm to align things. Because once people do that, people match topics better. So there has to be some kind of human feedback or evaluation to really make things right. And many times we have these disambiguated entities or similar like matching terms, but we mean different things. There's new terms that appear with like slang and other things. So it makes things very complicated for the system just to have like a dry mechanical way to understand the meanings and, let's say, provide that information. There always has to be this sort of like feedback from a human. This good, not good. So that is a part of the algorithm. And another point, just as an argument here, if you think the way we're building these vectors on the page, it actually already aligns with groups of users and their interests and their potential curiosity or things like that. And I've seen this in Koray's case studies. If you do this correctly, you can actually realize that people stay on the page longer, because once they read the first answer that they were searching for, and then they see, they get a satisfying, the question, the answer, they get the satisfying information. They scroll lower, they see the next question, which is also interesting for them, because they are in this group of users that maybe want to buy this thing or want to learn about it. Let's say it's like a share or something, and then they think, oh, but like, can you like charge it, or can you do these like additional like attachments to it? And that's already being answered. Then they check that, they scroll lower, and then they think, oh, well, but can I use it for, like, I don't know, beard trimming or like haircuts or something? And that's also answered. And then they go further, but can you do it, let's say, can you travel with it, or is it safe to take it on the airplane? And there is also answer for that. So if person is really interested, the questions that you present in your vector, they will also be exciting or relevant or interesting for the user. So this is exactly about understanding the statistics and data and the like algorithm, the statistical structure, but then also people and like where they are in this buying process. Yeah. Is this answering the question?
Yeah, I think so. And like what I would add to it is one thing that we discussed earlier also is kind of trending aspects. Like if you are looking at it, what is trending now? How does the configuration change based on that? So as always with SEO, it's never ending, but kind of if you build it, like you said, from the user aspect, you should have a kind of an evergreen setup, and then you can adjust it based on these kind of aspects that is changing.
Yeah, also, I will add one more thing. Koray has lots of e-commerce case studies. You can check them out really easily. And I remember very precisely one thing. Most of the time, and maybe this is not relevant to your case, but if you check the queries and all of the statistics, most of the time you have your product where you need to describe it, explain everything around it. That sort of becomes your main target. And from there, you have sort of two different directions. One becomes how to use it, who should use it, how to use it in these specific conditions. So it's all about kind of utilizing it or like information around the product. And then you have your product page where it's about buying. And there you go to the questions like who should buy and like, you know, the prices or why you should buy, in which cases you need to buy this, things like that. So, and that's pretty much then used to, let's say you can think in categories or groups of different products and things like that. But that's kind of the part of the topical map. And once it's done, as we're seeing here, after defining a topical map, then you just go and build out the vectors, then the briefs, then you write it, then you publish it, and
yes,
maintenance.
Yes, a nice question on that kind of like how, like it's an interesting question, like how much like time and money you would spend on kind of different parts of the topical map in terms of content, because we all know that a content-driven strategy, you need to prioritize, etc. When you're thinking about it in that aspect, like if you're trying to differentiate different parts, so where are you focusing like most of the author's time, and how are you thinking regarding that aspect?
So this will depend on the current condition of the site. But if we're talking a completely brand new launch, then we need to compete and we need to get the impressions, as many of them as possible. Hopefully and ideally as relevant impressions to our source context as possible. So it would be prioritizing the topics or the concepts that are being searched the most, that are, let's say, trending or really important. We need to cover them in a, and this is tricky because how many of those do we have and how closely they are connected? Because maybe there's one or two topics like that, so we can cover them, but then there is a template of queries, which separately it's not that massive, but maybe we can use it to scale, and as a group, it actually brings lots of impressions, lots of search volume. But again, it depends how closely we can connect these things. And then if there's a limited budget, then things like templates, they save almost the entire project. Yeah. It's a bit,
It's like, case by case that is hard to explain, but
the one sentence answer is to just focus on impressions as much as possible.
Yeah. What role does schema markup plays in enhancing semantic SEO practices in a time if AI will this be given even more weightage?
So I would say it's not super critical, but it is helpful. And in some specific cases, in some specific scenarios, based on what I heard from Koray, it can be really helpful. So if I remember correctly, there was something related to timestamps or time frames. So it's topics that are really, like, it's very critical to see the date of something. So in those cases, it's helpful to sort of emphasize these type of details through schema. Also, I think for local, like a few months ago, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, something like that, Google added this. It was either organization name or something about the organization. I don't remember clearly now. But the thing about schema itself is you provide structured, clear information, which helps search engine to confirm things much easier. It doesn't mean it's a strong ranking factor or you can just rank with schema, although maybe I should be careful with my words because I haven't done a lot of testing. But I can say that on some of the sites, I did use schema where it's, you can say, not very like prominent, important. It's not a big deal really. I did not do any A/B testing in terms of operating with schema or without, but sites are doing like pretty well. Just and I don't know how much I can attribute of that to the markup. And then the question in time of AI, will this be given more weight? I think not, because you can generate schema with AI as well. You can even automate it if you're doing lots of. If you take a more programmatic approach and try to structure things more in a more detailed way, you can generate this type of schema. So it's not something that's very, very difficult to, let's say, manipulate or control, which is why I believe Google will not decide to make it more important. But it's good to have as a like sub layer of just confirming everything that you're presenting or saying. The thing is, when you update the pages or something changes, it's important to not just change the content, but also go and adjust the schema, because it's not visible, so people forget about this. And I had cases like that.
For me, it's really about like cost of retrieval in terms of like, of course, it's much easier for Google to read this kind of structured data than unstructured. And especially when you look at like data accuracy, etc., when you're looking at kind of, okay, we're really saying that this is the height and this is a height attribute with a certain height in a certain way. And that's confirming it with a higher accuracy, a higher salience score, etc. So in that essence, it could help. And in ecom, of course, once again, it's more prominent because so many features is building up on it. And especially with like in Europe right now, they're rolling out popular products in a wider way where you need updates on the kind of pricing and everything in a higher pace. Then it's important. But from, as you say, from a more content-driven site, I wouldn't say it's as important.
Yeah, and also, no, search engine is kind of shifting or perceiving things in a way that things like schema is a suggestion or a hint from the webmaster or the owner of the website towards something, instead of like a forceful signal or a strong command that it is like this and it is fixated. So they're analyzing your content, they're paying attention, a lot of attention on your content, on your pages and site-wide, and then come additional details, additional signals. And then they try to pick up extra details there. In case if you have, and this is my, let's say, speculation or assumption, but in case they really like you and they really want sort of to promote you, but there are some small misconceptions. However, you can confirm those misconceptions in the schema. That helps them maybe take a decision in your favor. But what this means is that you shouldn't really have misconceptions in your content in the first place. So, no. And if you want to use schema, then use it precisely and accurately, and also refresh that. So it's going back to these quality thresholds where you want to have everything excellent. as a hint, as a direct signal, as everything else. All of this in a combination will be helping you. That's the principle of holistics or holistic SEO. Do everything. Do everything.
In an optimal way, not harder than that.
Yeah.
Let's jump on to this question. It's a long one. How do you reason in a scenario where you want to build topical authority for a very specific product and a narrow subject? For example, a company that sells only one product, let's say it's a vending machine that only serves iced coffee. How far from the product itself would you focus on? My concern is drifting too far from the product, so Google no longer understand what is the core of my business and website.
Right. So to do this correctly, it's really like important, or you just have to have a deep understanding of the semantics, the index structure, and all these things. I would say it is helpful to go multiple times from like the step 0 to step 10, basically from just building topical map from scratch and all the way to like writing the briefs, connecting all the links and publishing that network, and going back and forth a few times to see where things are connected and where they're not. So in this specific case, how to let's say how to determine or how to reason. First, understand the queries and the search demand. If you want to sell this vending machine for like iced coffee, and it has, let's just estimate, it has like 5,000 searches, and there is not much else, like that's a group of like every type of question related to vending machine about iced coffee. That will not be enough. You want to cover more, so you would have additional questions where you would want to compare this machine to another machine, or maybe laws, rules. It depends on which state, how it works, but maybe. So let me step back a bit. It's helpful to understand the competitors that are ranking and how wide they go. For example, if you see that all of the competitors that are ranking, they don't only talk about the iced coffee machine, but they talk about all kinds of machines. And let's say they are manufacturers, they are doing maybe not even vending machine, but I think there are these like a game type of machines where you can like toss a coin and play something like so. Maybe these things are related because the same type of manufacturers produce those. So all those manufacturers create all these types of machines. Therefore, the current situation on the web is manufacturers that produce, again, all these type of vending machines. They're all covering all of that. So if you will try to go and enter the index and you just only talk about the like coffee and like iced coffee machine, you become too narrow, which just doesn't make sense from the like index standpoint.
And just to jump in there, I can say like you shouldn't go too broad, because if it's not a part of the user journey in any way, like the customer journey, then it's challenging to earn any money on that kind of. But you still sometimes need to go slightly broader than you think to be able to achieve that topical authority, because the segment maybe is wider than your product and your product group. So I think that is what you're saying, like, yeah, maybe it's coffee. We don't know, because we need to look at kind of what is the competition, etc., and looking at kind of entity structures, etc. But yeah, it's about historical data that you need to achieve. You need to achieve certain volumes to be able to generate a topical authority.
Yeah, maybe if I can try to give like a slightly different perspective or a more practical way. Let's say a vending machine that sells iced coffee. Who would want to search for that? Someone that doing like a side hustle, because I know something like this is like an open industry in the United States. I assume in Europe it has to have like more regulations or sort of like agreements. You need to have some kind of contract with the let's say the mall where you want to install that, or things like that, I assume. But who would be searching for these type of terms, and also in which country, and what else are they searching for? So are they looking for like, how can I monetize specific thing, or they're just researching the vending machines themselves, or it's like a super massive industry? I know, actually, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in Sweden, coffee is really, really popular. Like, it's a really like big thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're number 2 in the world in capita on coffee. So.
Yeah. So then, in that sense, does this search volume come from Sweden? And do people, again, do they want to produce them? Do they want to rent them? Do they want to install them? Who is the like user behind that? And then you can think, if, let's say, well, as I said, if it's a manufacturer, what else do they manufacture? If it's someone who wants to, so that means also like, what else do they sell? And what's the potential user behavior there? Maybe they want to install in their, I assume, let's say, if it's like a hairdresser, they want to install a few of these vending machines there, so people can buy. So it would be a business owner that wants to do extra monetization for their like office, or like the physical presence. So in that case, it would be things like ways to monetize or earn more, or even like maybe cover rent for the business in like passive ways. These would be the relevant topics for this specific industry here, or this specific question, because your answer there becomes relevant, and it leads to the actually like learning about these machines further on. But then the tricky part is the person asked about only iced coffee and not everything else. So since it's this narrow, most likely, I'm just assuming, you will need to connect to other vending machines, the monetization behavior, or the needs, or like the true reasons why would someone want to acquire it. And that will be about this type of earning more money, monetizing, or doing these kinds of like motivations, basically, from the owner of the business.
Love back to you, Koray.
Wow. Hello, Mr. Koray.
I think we should take one last question. We're getting up on time here. Let's see if we have one more here. Maybe just pull up this. I assume that trend data should influence our contextual vectors prioritizations for a certain topic as well. It's basically a subpart of prominence.
Yes, that is correct. Of course.
Short and sweet answer.
Because if we assume trend data is related to the search demand, because that's how we can identify trend data, that already is a part of the methodology and a part of the course. So,
absolutely. Great. Then we're coming up on time here, and I think we both said, you and me, that like we're happy to do this for the community. Super happy to see a lot of the names that I noticed in the community chats, etc. And I hope we all can grow together, because we like these subjects, and we can all do different things to help each other to explain our points of view, because that is what it's all about. And in the end, we want to grow. We want to take more of the search traffic in the world. So hopefully we can do that together. Do you have any last words, Pavel?
Yeah, definitely. It's about learning together and sharing. It's a very massive concept. Trying to process words or content with like systems or programs, it's really difficult. And Googlers have been able to achieve like really insane progress. So now we can realize through their research and their patents that they're doing in a crazy multi-dimensional way, which is what we are working with here. So it is about learning, testing, trying, and discussing, sharing. It's always great to see the perspective of other people. And I think it was great questions today. So I'm very, very happy to be here and happy to see all of our members as well.
Yeah. Thank you for this session, Pavel, and have a nice day, all of you others, and see you soon somewhere. Take care.
Thank you so much, Pontus. Thank you, everyone.